Welcome to the Cooperative Connection. I'm your host, Mihaela Trash, and today we have a special episode that breaks down everything you need to know about capital credits, what they are, how they benefit you as a member, and how you can claim them. Joining me is LREMC's Chief Financial Officer, Daniel Leonard, who will explain the 2024 payout and much more. So sit back and stay tuned as we explore how LREMC gives back to you. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Daniel.
I appreciate it, Mihaela. So just a little bit about myself. I'm actually an alumni from UNCP. I'm from this area. And I was working in public accounting after graduating from UNCP with my accounting degree, and got my CPA licensure shortly after that. Was working again as an auditor in public accounting for a while, and then decided to make the change in industry, and I've been here for about 2 years now, ever since, and I've been really enjoying it, so I appreciate it.
Let's start by breaking it down for our listeners. Could you explain what capital credits are and how they benefit our members?
Absolutely. So capital credits, you can think of them essentially as the leftover piece that members are allocated from our margin every year. And what that margin essentially is after our revenues that we get from our membership, it's after operating expenses are taken out, that balance that's left over, and typically that's referred to as profit. In other companies, we call it margin in the co-op world. It's their allocation of that leftover piece. And so the way that it's allocated is we base it off of the kilowatt hours that are purchased from us. And so the more kilowatt hours you purchase, the higher that capital credit balance is going to be of that amount that we allocate every year. And it begins accumulating from the very first time that they start paying their electric bills as well. So your very first bill that you get, you're going to get a piece of that essentially going into a capital credit balance. And you can think of it as a cash account that's kind of held, that's tracked by year that we have at this point. And so that's a huge benefit of being at the co-op. If you think of Duke and some of the other utilities that are out there, nothing against them, but they're not cooperative, so they don't return those capital credit checks each year. The municipalities and the IOUs of the world. So it's a great benefit of being part of the cooperative business model.
Yes, it's definitely a way that we give back to our members and make sure that the cooperative is here for them. And what does it mean when you say that capital credits are allocated to the members?
So as I stated, that allocation at the end of the year, so we get, through our fiscal year, which is a calendar year, so at the end of December, we look at how much margin that the company has on the books. And after we do all of our closing entries to get everything nice and neat and orderly, we go back and allocate that amount to each member based on that kilowatt hours, as I mentioned. And so again, the more kilowatt hours you purchase through the year, the bigger piece of that margin is yours as a member owner, and that piece will go into that capital credit account on your behalf. And we keep a permanent record of all these allocations that we do, and it will remain in those capital credit balances until it's retired at some point in the future.
Next, can you tell us what is a retirement of capital credits?
And that's a great question. So, and it's something we did very recently, and is a retirement of capital credits. Essentially, that's where we take those balances that you have allocated, and we actually give you back some of that cash in the form of a check, which some of the members may be getting now as we're going through, and just recently did one here. The board reviews the financial data that we have each year around this time of year, and just determines the years that we want to pay back, and they determine the dollar amount that they want to pay back based on suggestions from our team, and they will look and see from the financial health of the organization what is a responsible and reasonable amount to give back to the membership. And so in years when you're going through experiencing either lower margin from higher costs, or you're going into a period of heavy investment in the utility space, which we're doing now, you'll start to see those capital balances or capital credit retirement amounts decrease a little bit because you're trying to keep the cash on hand to be able to pay for all the different pieces that we're trying to cover between capital expenditures, that'd be substations, lines, all those different things that cost a lot more these days, and then also operations as well to keep your margin in a healthy place. So that's just one of the different pieces that they'll look at to determine where does the balance that we need to pay out, how much is it going to actually be for each year, and make sure that we stay fiscally responsible, because we strive at Lumbee River to make sure our financial health is in a good spot every year from year to year, and make sure that with the changes in the industry we keep up with whatever needs to happen from the cost perspective. So.
Moving to 2024, what capital credits are being paid this year?
So for this year, and we actually just mailed the checks back on October 1st of 2024, we covered 100% of 2004 and then 29% of 2017. And so the total of those amounts that we decided to return in form of retirement of capital credit checks was just right around $3 million. And essentially, the reason we do that is we're on this 20-year cycle, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes, I believe, but we want to make sure that we're returning a good dollar amount every single year to make sure that the members are going to get a piece of that back. We also have a minimum balance of $25. So if you have a capital credit check amount that's returned to you of $5, for example, they're not actually going to give you a check for that until maybe next year when the amount goes up to above $25, so that we can return that amount without having to cut a check and the expense that goes into cutting that check to cover the cost of it. So.
Yeah, and so with our 60,000 members, that $3 million is divided to all of them, or it depends on?
Depends on their capital credit balance. So that would again go back to how many kilowatt hours they purchased during that year.
Okay.
So for example, if you were a member in 2004, a long time ago, 20 years ago, and you had a certain percentage of that, whatever the percentage of the overall kilowatt hour sales you had, that's going to be your piece of the margin amount that's allocated to you.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful to know. For members wondering about the past, what happens to capital credits allocated after 2004?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we have a 20-year cycle, and we have a hybrid method that we do where we do a little bit of the we do all of the 20th oldest year to maintain that 20-year cycle, and then we do some of the more recent years as well. Again, I mentioned that we do 100% of 2004 and 29% of 2017. So the reason we do that hybrid method like that is to try to give members who have been on the system for a long time, we return their capital credits to them. But also we like to give some of the members that are newer investors into member-owned utility some capital credits back as well, so that we kind of cover both ends. And it helps smooth out the margin amounts that we have to pay back staying on that 20-year cycle. And the 20-year cycle that we maintain, it sounds like a long time, but it's actually very reasonable for co-ops. There's other co-ops that are 25, 30 years that they return. That gold standard is 20 years of returning capital credits. And so we strive to be able to maintain good fiscal policy and good financial standing where we can stay on that 20-year cycle.
Now let's address a sensitive but important topic for our listeners. Many members may be wondering how to handle capital credits in the unfortunate event of a member's passing. Daniel, can you walk us through how someone can apply for the capital credits of a deceased member?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So in the event of that unfortunate thing happening, either the administrator of the estate, if there's an estate, or a family member can call the office. The number is 910-843-4131, and they can select the capital credit option when they do that. They'll be taken to our capital credits expert. They can tell them and inform them of the situation that's going on, and then they need to provide a new address for the capital credits to be sent to if it has changed. And they also need to bring a death certificate in and complete an application that we have to make sure everything is in good order there before that does change at that point. So.
And finally, how can someone check to see if they have unclaimed capital credits?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every couple of years, we sheet every year, but every couple of years the states require that we sheet the monies that go unclaimed back to the responsible states that the person has moved to. So let's say you were a member of Lummi River at one point, but you moved to Tennessee, for example. The state of Tennessee is going to say, hey, their capital credits, if they go unclaimed, belong to us. If they go unclaimed, that's the key. And so what you can do is you can call our office if you haven't gotten a capital credit check and believe you should, and see if there's any unclaimed balances out there from previous years of retirements. And if there is, we will write you a check. We will give you that unclaimed balance that's been sitting out there. If not, if it's already been escheated, we'll let you know which state it has been escheated to. And at that point, let you know that it has been escheated, and you can contact the state to go after it from that point on. But we strive to make sure our members end up with the dollars that are allocated to them. We would much rather those capital credit checks end up in the hands of our member owners than to the states that we need to issue them to. So if there are any questions our membership has, they should absolutely call in and make sure that they've got any unclaimed monies that they may have had in the past.
So that's good that we do give them the unclaimed
That's
capital
right.
credits that they have.
That's right. Don't want those going out there and just sitting out there. So.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Cooperative Connection. A huge thank you to Daniel Leonard for shedding light on capital credits and helping our members understand the benefits they are entitled to. Remember, as a member of LREMC, you're not just a customer. You're an owner. The work we do, including capital credits, is all about giving back to you. If you have any more questions or want to check for unclaimed credits, be sure to visit our website or contact LREMC directly. Stay connected with us for more episodes where we continue to share how your cooperative is working for you. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, take care.